Okay, so we're going to do the dado part, and that's the tab that looks like that. So I'm going to start up at the top, work my way down. I'm going to start off with tray 1, but what it does say is the first line or a couple of sentences basically cover everything. All dados on all boards are true 1/4 inch and true 3/8 inch depth, and start at an exact 3/8 inch up from the edge. Test all on 1 inch thick scrap and confirm with calipers until perfect. So I already did set this up, so I know it's perfect because I tested it already, but I'm just going to show you basically what I'm doing. I'm just taking a piece of scrap, making sure it's the same thickness, because that's going to fit through the feather board. It's also a good time to adjust the feather board, and it's a huge thing on a shaper. You know, obviously the same thing on a table, a router table. But so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run a test. Whoa. Didn't mean to do that. Using this opportunity to tighten the feather board while it's actually running. That way I've got nice pressure on 1 inch. So there's my dado, perfect 1/4, because the cutter is a 1/4. On a shaper they call it a cutter instead of a bit, but it's a cutter. It's a perfect 3/8, and then it's also a perfect 3/8 inch up from the top. So now I go ahead, and the next step says to go ahead on tray 1. We've got our... Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to work on the underside of tray number 1. Again, it's the underside, not the top. Okay. Now this one, some of the sequence on this one is a little bit out of order because I ran it through the CNC earlier, and now what I'm doing is doing the joinery first, and then I run it through the CNC. So that's why those cavities are already in there. Otherwise, no big deal. So again, on tray number 1, what it's telling you is we want to do the underside, and the issue here is this: is if you notice, it has the dado doesn't run the full length. It only runs that little blue area, blue area, blue area, blue area, right? And that's right here, right here, right here, and right here. And the reason for that is that we're going to put a board underneath there that they're going to attach to. And that board is 1 inch across from here to here. And so the screws that go down into that are going to come halfway in, which is 1/2 inch in. Right? So, but the dado underneath is also 1.5 inches, or excuse me, 1/2 inch in. So if I ran the dado fully across underneath, then some of those screws, when they go in, they're going to go into the dado. And that can be an issue. It can deflect the screw. It might come out this way. It might go in that way. It can do all kinds of stuff. So rather than that, we're going to get plenty of grip on this, and we're also going to be able to prevent that twisting because of the spline joinery. All we need is here and here, here and here. It's kind of like dominoes, you know, like festival dominoes and biscuits and stuff like that. You know, they don't run the whole thing. They only run part of it every couple inches or something like that. So the instructions do say to go in at about 5.5. And again, this isn't rocket science, but there's no reason not to get it close, I guess. So a 5.5 in. Oh, I got the wrong side. Just checking to make sure you were paying attention. So I have 5.5 in, there's a line. 5.5 in, there's a mark. 5.5 in, there's a mark. 5.5 in, there's a mark. I don't need to mark anything else. Now, from there, I want that dado to be, what did we say it was? I think it's about 3.5 inches. So which is half of that's 1 3/4. So all we're doing here is just going approximate. So I'm just going to go, let's just call it 4 inches. So my dado is going to be like that right in there. That's 2 inches in one way, 2 inches the other way. Again, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. So that's my dado area right in there. We're not going to be seeing this. Plus I can sand that off, but I just want to basically cover that. So let's go and bring it over, and here's how we're going to do that. Now, if it were a router with a guide, bushing or a guide, edge guide, then it would be easy because we would just put that on there, plunge it down, go there, and then be done. Again, plunge it down, go our 4 inches, pull it up and go down. But because we have a shaper and we're not going to be able to use the feather lock on that. So I'm going to take that off because on that one, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to do this, and I feel comfortable doing this. It's, you know, if you don't, then don't do it. But you could do the same thing with if you had a router. And a router, the bit would be coming up from underneath, and you'd go like this. Your bit would be moving. You'd figure out about where that is, and then you'd slowly bring her down. You run your distance, and then you come up. All right. So this is the same thing, only we're going to be going in the opposite direction. Let me get my headgear on. I'm looking down, I can see that, and I just have to make sure there's no kickback here. In the material, I think it's about 4 inches, no big deal. And there's my dado. So I'm going to do more of those. Okay, so we have all 4 of our dados. We're set to go on the bottom of tray number 1. Now we're going to work on tray, on the next. Okay, so there's my dado, 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 and we're going to be doing it the same way. Okay, so we have our back and our front dadoed. We're set to go on that. Then the other pieces that we need dadoed, and again, the instructions for the back and the front were there, but again, I have to fix that other thing. Here's the side dado on the back and the front, because we have two sets of dados on the back and the front. We have one along the top, because that's going to be to join it to the top, but then we also have another one at the bottom that's going to join, that's where the floor is going to go into that cavity. And so that one is, we don't have to deal with this 5.5 inch thing, but I do want to hold it back from going all the way to the end, because I don't want that dado end to be seen from the end grain, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically, I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm not going to be able to put the featherboard on there. I'm going to gradually work my way in, just looking down at the cutter. Then once I'm in all the way, I'm going to run it all across. And then as I get near the end, then I'm going to pull the piece out away from the cutter or from the fence. Okay, now this one was already done by the CNC. Again, remember I ran the CNC before I did joinery on this one. And after I thought about that, I decided to change that process. So I'm going to take my chances. I could trust this dado because it was done by a different machine, so the calibration could be a little off, or I can redo it. So I'm going to go ahead and redo it so I know that it's going to be, so it might be wider or whatever, but I'm going to do it anyhow. I decided that's where I made my decision. So this one is not done yet by the CNC. This one will actually be made by the shaper. Talking to shaper, you're talking, I forget the diameter, but I think they're about 3 inches or something, the whole blade. So this is the way it's going to turn out. You're going to have this little ski hill thing up there, which will be fine because we're going to cut a good inch off the floor, each corner, and so it shouldn't interfere. If it does, that's the reason we dry fit. If it does interfere, then I could just take that 45 and bring it back a little ways, or I could run this through, or I could take my router with the edge guide on it, put it in here as my gauge, and then just kind of clean that up. And in fact, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do anyhow, is just take a router, set the guide up, put the bit in there for all of my adjustments for that bit, and then all I got to do is just bring it down and then just catch here and catch here. That's another way that could be done. But otherwise, we got that one done, and then really what's left is the 2 spreaders, because they're going to go in there. And again, we look at the instructions regarding the spreaders. That's dado number 7 and number 8. The dados are on the inside of the spreaders. The dado runs the full length with no stops. Now, here's all we're going to do here is, where's the inside? Well, they're symmetrical. The only thing is that I would look at it and go, okay, if this was, especially if this was a rustic piece or something, I'd look at it and go, there's a really nice knot right here or something. Do I want that to be outside or inside, or a color? Like there's actually a different color of that wood versus this wood, because these are, remember, these are laminates, right? So no difference on this one. I do like the outside on that, and I do like the outside on that. So I'm going to make my insides like that. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we'll get a small piece of wood here, and my fingers are going to get closer here. And the dado is running full through, so this is definitely where we're going to want to use the feather lock, and it's already set to go. So now I can just run that through. Again, we learn as we go, hopefully. So here's what I should have done, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and tweak the instructions to say don't cut out here until after the dado is in. The reason for that, you could see I was starting to get a little closer than I even cared for as far as that goes. Now if we had not cut that out earlier, well, we'd have a nice piece of wood. It'd be a lot higher up away from the bit. It wouldn't even get near any of the shaft and everything else in there, right? So that's a change that I'll make in the drawings and in the instructions. But other than that, all of our dados are now done, and we're basically ready, I think, for dry fit.